Happy Monday, everyone. Today is going to be an amazing chat where we bridge the art education world with the art world and feature a bunch of amazing artists. So today we're going to be meeting with Ekow Nimako, who is an awesome Lego artist. I don't even want to say Lego artist because he is a sculptor. He is a magician with what he does with Lego. So he will be joining us shortly here. And if you haven't already followed him, you have to, because his work is amazing and your students are going to be so intrigued by how he creates his work. So it looks like Ekow is in our chat here. So if you think of any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in and we'll make sure that he answers them. So, drum roll, he's going to be here any moment. And again, yay!
Hi.
Hi, Ekow. How are you doing?
I'm good. Let me just turn up the volume here a bit.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you today. I saw like a few other art teachers were like, this one's going to be good. Because your work is amazing and we're like super psyched about the fun new things you have coming too. So, for people that don't know you, can you give us a quick intro, Ekow?
Certainly. My name is Ekow Nimako. I'm a Ghanaian Canadian internationally exhibiting visual artist. And I make all sorts of different kinds of sculptures using Lego as my medium. Sculptures that range in size from full-size unicorns to small floral bouquets. So there's really quite a range of work that I do. And I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm super psyched to chat with you too. Every time I see you posting just your process or your work, it's just like awe-inspiring. I love it. So I know people feel the same way too. I see already a couple people commenting about how they share your work with their students and how we're already kind of infusing that into the classroom. So we're super psyched to chat. So let's talk just a little bit about your process first. And like I said, any of y'all that are joining us today, if you think of any questions as we chat and you want to just drop them in to the chat, I will try my very best to rein those in so that we can get all our questions answered here. But at the end of the chat today too, I'll be sharing a bunch more about Ekow's work, including some very special things in the works, which is going to be awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your process first? I mean, some of your sculptures are thousands of pounds and feet upon feet, right? So can you tell us how the process of your work comes to be from beginning to finished sculpture?
Sure, yeah. Let me walk you through it, Sarah. So each kind of sculpture is its own beast, if I could use the turn of phrase. It's my process is always evolving for the most part. I don't use computer-assisted programs to build or to create my sculptures. It really starts with the imagination and just like be daydreaming or getting into this space of kind of artistic reverie. Or it might be, you know, I saw something on television or in a movie or outside, just some kind of inspiration. And then the seed gets planted, and from there I just start really thinking about it, the ideation of what I could do or how I could translate it to what I do. And then it's really, I like to get my hands really into the material. So sometimes I'll do some sketches of some work, but for the most part, I like to just kind of start building, and that's where the experimentation begins of just, you know, grabbing like Lego parts. I have so many here. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds of variations of different types of parts. So aside from a few kind of tricks that I know that I lean on when I'm creating certain types of things, like with the humanoid or the human type creations that I make, I'll typically start with the eyes. Or that's actually, in fact, with all creatures or anything that has eyes, that's usually where I start with the eyes, and then it just starts to kind of unfold from there. It's really trial and error as well. I don't, you know, like this sculpture you see kind of behind you, this one here, it's called Anansi, and it's depicting a boy version of the Akan deity or trickster deity of the same name, Anansi. And I've never really seen the sculpture depicted as a child. It's Anansi is known as like to take the shape of a spider. So, but I didn't know that sculpture was going to turn into Anansi. I listened, or I really enjoyed the Anansi books growing up, but I just started making a sculpture, and then something went wrong with the arms and it didn't look right. So I just, you know, started moving around with the posture, and usually it's this process until I find form that speaks to me. So if I started out thinking, you know, someone's going to be doing this other kind of pose, or, you know, interacting with the environment in a certain way. Usually I have to surrender that during the process in pursuit of capturing the form that speaks most accurately to what I have in my mind. So it's a give and take, definitely a process of give and take. And like I said, it's really evolutionary, just kind of working through it. And when it's finished, it tells me it's finished, you know.
I love that. I feel like, I mean, sometimes when there's big, large pieces, you feel like there's this super complex process. Not to say that this isn't complex, but I feel like hearing you talk about it, it's a little bit more playful and experimental and kind of just like following what you think might work and trying. And I love too, just hearing you talk about, I wrote down a couple words that stuck out to me were taking that seed and like planting it and just letting it kind of evolve into what it wants to be. And then also I heard you say, like, when you were doing that sculpture behind you, something went wrong, but like wrong is also an ambiguous term too when it comes to art, right? So I love that you're taking that mistake or that wrong that might have happened and turning it into something that now is a piece that's so beautiful. So I think that's a great way to put it too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to talk just a little bit about some of the things that you have on the horizon, some of the things that you've done in the past as a creative, but also you clearly work with a pretty limited palette, specifically the pieces behind you. But in general, I know you add a few pieces of color every once in a while. But can you tell us why you're specifically choosing a limited palette and then also highlighting black in particular?
Yeah, certainly. There's usually three reasons that I speak to when asked about why I build in black. And the easiest answer is, one, I just like black. You know, I'm interested in black as this color, this void, this sophisticated shade. I don't know, there's just something, and I mean this strictly from a visual perspective. And then there's the other side of it, which is that black is the most versatile Lego part that I've come across. Like black, white, and the gray spectrum they have, which is light bluish gray and dark bluish gray, or sometimes there's different names for it, but essentially there's two gray palettes that they have pretty profusely, and black and white. So the most amount of parts come in those colors. And above all of them, from what I've seen, my experience, black has the most amount of variation. And I need that variation. It's super important. You know, there's a lot of people that build Lego sculptures for a living. And I've noticed that a lot of the time they use bricks to do their building, right? So just to be clear what we're talking about. So this, you know, any kind of brick part, there's computer assisted programs that can be used to create sculptures using the bricks. I mean, they can use and incorporate other parts as well, but because, you know, like here's an example. This is, I think, a reptilian eye that I was kind of working on, and I don't know if I'm still going to go with it, but we'll see. But like if you take a closer look, you see like the different types of parts that are used just to create this one kind of eye and this shape. So it's it's really kind of this strange kind of process that I find black always just provides. You know, when I need something, it's very rare that I go onto the site to order parts and then it's like, oh, it doesn't come in black. It's rare. It happens sometimes, but not. Whereas with other colors, I'd run into roadblocks all the time. And sometimes those roadblocks are great. Don't get me wrong. It's just like when we talked about that wrong or that mistake, that error. Like, you know, it's these errors that breed innovation, and that's existed in all spheres. So, you know, I welcome those challenges, but not when it's about the raw material itself. I do need those parts. You know, I need that thing. You know, and then the last reason is because I identify as a black person, right? I'm black, and even though, of course, my skin isn't actually black, it's brown, but we know these racial identifiers. So when I make these children out of Lego, these sculptures, then they're unmistakably black, despite what other elements might not indicate any kind of particular racial identity. They'll be regarded as black because that is truly actually what they are. Mm-hmm. Even though, yes, indeed, I definitely do add authentic black features to them so that those identifiers still exist. Yeah. So those are. Yeah.
I honestly expected, I mean, I knew a little bit after, you know, checking out your work too, but I think that it's really interesting, the logistical, like I just need a lot of pieces, but then also the symbolism and the statement and the story that comes with it all too makes it even more interesting as well. And I love the term too, unmistakably Black, because that helps to make sure that your story is in fact, you know, coming through in the palette that you're choosing as well too.
And I will add actually one other thing. There is one other to this, which is that it strips away, using Black in particular, it strips away the Lego-ness of my work. And that's a challenge that I haven't faced it so much at this point, but earlier on in my career, it was difficult because, like, you know, how do you classify me and what I do? I'm a sculptor, yes, but it's so like non-traditional that it, like, sometimes the art world, it was kind of lost in translation, or where do we place this? And it was important for me to make sure that my work isn't, despite being made completely of Lego and still being in the Lego world, it is not beholden to the iconic culture of Lego, you know? And I appreciate that culture. I appreciate that it exists. I've loved Lego since I was a child, but at the same time, I make the distinction between art and like hobby building, right? And there's a whole mass industry of people making insanely large things and everything else out of Lego. So it was important that I distinguish between, you know, this being like sophisticated fine art that just happens to be composed of Lego, in opposed to like a Lego dinosaur. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why too, it's hard to want to introduce you as like a Lego artist, because you're so much more than that. You are an artist, you are a sculptor, you are an inventor, and I mean it. And you happen to use that as your material. And I think that's kind of a cool example to show students too, is elevating a material, or taking a material that they might already know and are familiar with, but then, you know, going beyond a little bit so that it's not even familiar as you look at your pieces. I mean, that's part of what's so astonishing about your work, is just the pure complexity of it, but the fact that like you kind of can't tell initially what it's made from, and then as you dig in a bit more, then it starts to really take over. So that's definitely a relatable part of that work for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I wanted to grab a couple questions here from the chat before I move on to a few others that I have. A couple of friends were asking, have you ever experimented with like melting or manipulating the Legos at all?
No, it's not. I mean, yeah, it's not something that I ever really wanted to do. I think in the very, very beginning, when I didn't have a grasp of what was actually out there, and I wasn't even, you know, I didn't have a show yet. I was just like playing around, and I wasn't ordering parts regularly. There was a period there where I kind of, you know, I was like, maybe if I could just do this. But a lot of that was because I just didn't know. You know, I remember joining this like kind of Lego competition at one point as a newbie, and some of the people there were like hardened Lego fans, you know, like they've been with Lego their entire lives. And I had a period there where music was my thing, and I was like a musician for a very long time, actively like making music. And so I wasn't like into Lego or even visual art really at all. It was just music. So I missed a whole lot of stuff that happened with Lego. So then here I am popping back into the Lego world and meeting all these Lego people, and they're just like, yeah, you know, because they'll explain something or just mention something. I'm like, what's that? They're like, what? You don't know about that? Oh. And then they tell me, oh, it's from set 6466. It has these things. And I was like, what? And then I need to go to this site and find this stuff. So I was, you know, and once I realized how much I had missed, I was like, oh man, like from there, that's when the real purist kind of came about.
Yeah.
Like I never used any of the Lego facsimiles, like the other kind of Lego products, like, you know, but it was always Lego specifically, because of course they're just the best, right?
Right.
Quality, everything is just the best. But yeah, so for a long period of time, I just, you know, so I wasn't sure what was going on. So there might have been a point where if I found a Lego piece that was broken, and that broken piece happened to actually work with what I'm doing, I'm like, cool, you know, it just works out. I didn't want that piece hanging off anyway. But now it's like it's so Puritan in that, like, I want the Lego to exist as it is, and part of the challenge is finding the parts that I need that will be able to help me achieve the formal goal of the artwork.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. I think I think that's the perfect description for it too. And that actually ties into two separate questions that kind of popped up here too. One is a quick one. If you know of a certain piece that doesn't come in black, but that you wish did, that was a question. Do you have one of those?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. There's a few of them, but the first one that came to my mind is a surfboard. There is a minifigure, and minifigures are like the small little characters. There's a minifigure accessory, and it's a surfboard. And so far as I know, it comes in a few colors, white and some others, but definitely not black. And the shape of that surfboard is a perfect feather tip.
Oh,
emulates the end of a feather with just the utmost symmetry. So I was really disappointed to find out that they didn't have it in black. But of course, you know, I find other ways, like as I don't know if you can see, like I find other type of feathery type of things that have that feel, and I make it work. And again, that's what I mean, that innovation where it comes in. So despite being like, I wish this came in black, if it did, I wouldn't have found this other way to make feathers, which I really like. So, you know, it's like, I guess one of those things that's just meant to be sometimes.
Yeah.
But if I do, you know, when I do get over to Denmark and talk to the Lego folks, I will put it in a word and say, please, just make the surfboard in black.
It's number one on the list is you need a black surfboard, please.
Please, I'll build you a giant condor, or I'll them. It'll look amazing.
To celebrate finally getting a black surfboard. I love it.
Yeah.
And then one more process question quick too was, I know you said once you finish the piece and you kind of like let it be done when it's done, what is your process as far as like maintaining that piece? Do you super glue? Do you like cut? What does that look like as far as like keeping it the way that you want it to be?
Yeah, it's I guess a mixture of things. Definitely glue. Glue is an important staple in what I do. I have to use glue. You know, I sell my artworks again, that's where it comes, that whole aspect of it being like artwork. And artwork is a commodity, and it's bought and sold and traded and all of that, and has this like value in our culture. So with that said, you know, Lego is made to come together, but it's also made to just as easily come apart.
Right.
So I can't have my artworks like falling apart or pieces falling off. I try to avoid the glue, so I only really use it when I have to. Sometimes glue residue can create a bit of a problem. But most times it's just a necessity. I need to use it. What happens is, in other ways to keep the work the way it is, I use metal armatures. So I'll design a metal frame, like this sculpture here of Anansi. I actually created this frame myself just from grabbing pieces of metal that I keep in the studio and then figuring it out in ways to make the metal interact with the Lego in a secure way. But most times for larger works, it's a necessity that I have metalsmiths and, you know, people that have those skills to fabricate a metal frame for me, and then I build the Lego around the metal frame. And then how we're able to get, like, you know, sea turtles kind of flying through the air and stuff like that. The Lego wouldn't hold up, and if it did, it wouldn't hold up forever.
Right. There's like a logistical like necessity over needing an armature and needing something to be built within. That makes sense too. Okay, so I know after this particular chat, I'm going to be sharing a few of some amazing YouTube videos that you have either featured in or that you've shared, including the Building Black, which was in 2017. And I love that because I think it's really can be really fun to show to students, no matter what level you teach, because you're kind of talking about what your process is, but then also a little bit of story as well too. So I just wanted to start a little conversation about what happens at the end in particular of the video when you're showing students creating lessons, creating their own kind of facial masks almost, or face out of Lego. And then how does that, in your opinion, encourage conversations about identity?
Yeah. So what Sarah's talking about is my workshop called Building Beyond, which has gone through quite a bit of evolution from when I actually originally started it. And so now Building Beyond has turned into these lovely pieces. So yeah, I've built a few African-inspired masks as part of my body of work, Building Black Amorphia. So larger scale African masks. So I just, at this time, when that video was shot, I was really just trying to figure out a simplified build that young people and people of all ages really could engage with, that wouldn't be too difficult to build, but also would speak to Afrofuturism and the importance of representing your identity. Because, you know, growing up, I didn't see a lot of myself in what I was doing, what I was interested in. And these things, like examples, Star Wars, you know, that is so like invaluable to my imagination growing up in the 80s and then in the 90s, and now just like I love the culture of Star Wars, but at the same time, people of color up until recently, and even recently there's still a lot of criticism about it, but up until recently they had the one, you know, black person representing like the entire like
Right.
Star Wars, you know, in every kind of trilogy there was that one person, and you know, it's not enough. So I wanted to create something where we could see ourselves in the future and not just surviving, but thriving. And Afrofuturism allows that because you can just be as expansive as you want. You could create your own descendant, like King Kofi here, who is like the ruler of the Neo Kingdom of Ghana in, like, you know, 500 years from now. And they're called the Peace Bringer, you know, for their dedication to intergalactic justice for all sentient beings. You know, it's you can create these things, and these people, it's not just some abstract character. The fact that it's a descendant is a really important part of building beyond, that it's your own family member you're building that is down the line, because at some point 1,000 years ago we had descendants, and 1,000 years from now we'll have descendants. So this moment in time is very important, just as that moment in time was, and the future one will be too. So that's what really brought me to like kind of building beyond. And since then, I've just kind of worked a way to kind of like condense it. And now, I mean, it's great because now it's going to be a kit that I can, you know, that's going to be available on my website for sale. So starting November 1st, you'll be able to purchase a kit like this. And, you know, it's great. It comes with like this instruction booklet. And so there's step-by-step instructions. This one is for Xavier Akai, and then they're able to actually build their own descendant. And, you know, it can like, it also has a stand, so it can be a desktop and just like kind of sit on top of your desk. There's 4 different models we have right now, but there's 8 altogether. The other 4, I guess we'll roll them out sometime down the line. But it's really exciting. And I've been into so many schools when I used to do the live workshop versions of this. And, you know, it's great just seeing how the kids really get activated when they get to, one, just play Lego in the middle of the day, but also the component of it where I'm actually talking to them about some of these experiences and why it's important for us to be, for all of us to be accurately represented, you know? So yeah, that's pretty much where that came from. And I'm so excited for this to launch. It's been a really long time coming. And we have a great tutorial video that goes with it. So once you order the kit, you have access to the video, then you watch the video, and I'm talking about some of these same insights and the importance of Afrofuturism in particular.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that too. And I'm super psyched to see what all of the kits look like and what the videos look like, because everything looks like it definitely would spark the interest of kids for sure. And I think that it's kind of the perfect connection between specifically art education, but also like the world of an artist. You know, there's so many times where we need to intentionally find an artist that's doing something our kids are interested in. And when have you put down a bin of Legos and kids been like, you know, like they always want to play.
Yeah.
Like they always want to build. Manipulatives and blocks and building are like constantly a popular piece in my classroom. So if I was like, oh, we're doing Legos now, like how could you not have the entire room like instantly excited? Yeah. So I'm super psyched to tell them about you as an artist, but also to show them too that there are ways to represent themselves and the people they see around them in their work through that kind of descendants creation that you've worked on. Now, have you created all of the like mask designs or the face designs yourself, and that's like all your creation, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I designed 8, like I said, but only 4 are going to actually be rolled out first. And that's the beauty. It's Lego, so I almost look at these as like a guide.
Yeah.
So you build it. And it's great because I've also seen that sometimes in the live, when I did the live versions, you know, some kids have more dexterity with Lego than others. And I could see like some of them wanted it to look cooler, but they just perhaps didn't have the time to really put into it, or they just didn't have perhaps like the inclination, or maybe not the inclination, but just like the understanding of Lego and what's possible.
Yep.
So it was important for me to create these just so that there's an aesthetic to strive for, where it's like, this looks so well put together and symmetrical, and I really like the way this looks. Great, you built it. Now change the hair color. You see the parts are there, so find those parts that you have or your friends might have, or order them, and change the hair color from black to green. Like, make it yours, make it your own descendant in whichever way you feel is cool. Put sunglasses on it, put a visor, do something. And I'm hoping that also once this launches and it starts to kind of make its rounds out there in the universe, in the world, and especially on the internet, then hashtagging Building Beyond. I love to see kids altering these kits and making them their own, and then posting about it, or just like it existing on the internet, because that'll be really cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like it's geared just towards children, but really it's not. I've done so many of these workshops, again, when I was doing them live, where it's for like teachers unions or different like corporate events and groups. So they're really it's really fun, and I think there's this great kind of educational component too, which is super important. That's why like the tutorial video aspect they go hand in hand,
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that a kid could ideally do on their own, but also could be really successful within a classroom space, whether it's doing like a STEAM or a STEM class, or in a library, or like in the art room, if it's independent, or maybe like as an entire class would be amazing. And I love too, because there is a beauty to giving kids a confidence boost first. So by starting with the kit and saying, okay, look, here's a way to build something so you can feel confident, so you can see the steps, you can see how things kind of work, and then it's time to take that confidence and now add your own spin on it. Because sometimes when we start from nothing and we're just expecting the knowledge or the inventiveness to be there right away, it can be really frustrating for students. So I love that you're giving them, like, here's something that's going to be successful if you follow it, and now what, right? What else can you do? Just like what you're clearly modeling through your work, Ekow, is taking something that, the blocks are there, the pieces are there, but now what is what you're kind of doing with your work as well.
And it's Lego, like I used to go crazy to get sets. My birthday comes, I'm like, yes, I get to go and get a big set. I'd go and I'd build it and finish it, and then that was it. I'd play with it a little bit, but then I'd harvest it for parts, and start creating other things. And most times I don't even return to making that thing. I know that there's a lot of Lego, like AFOLs, that's adult fans of Lego, and people that it's about the sets. So they have the stuff that they build and goof around with, but then they have the sets like on display and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it was because space was an issue or probably just my own like inclination. I just never really wanted to see like the sets. I wanted to get them, I wanted to have them, I wanted to build them. But then from that point forward, my imagination was just like wild. I was like, I need to turn this giant robot or to some civilization or do something, because I'm not satisfied with this truck and this helicopter. I need
I need more.
Yeah.
I need black surfboards.
Yeah. No.
I love it. I mean, that is part of the fun too, because there is something very satisfying about completing something and getting a piece done and following the directions and doing it, and like, okay, I did it. It's awesome. And that's why it is so dependent on the artist, that some people love creating it and then like celebrating that and letting it be its own thing. And then others like you are like, okay, now it's time to like, what did you say? Harvest it for parts. I love that. Like destruction, and which then becomes
destroying
a new piece. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hopefully not the pieces behind you.
No, not these. Well, sometimes.
Oh really?
Yeah, some artworks get decommissioned. Absolutely. Like,
Oh.
I have 3 studio rooms in my home, and I just like acquired this other one from our garage. Like, I was like, you know what? I need more space. The garage has got to go. So I converted it into another studio room, and in there is where I create my architectural pieces, right? This is a very base. So, and there's pieces that are in there now that they existed from a previous exhibition that I had, and now I'm preparing to do the sequel of that exhibition. And the artworks that don't sell or don't go on tour somewhere as part of another work, if they stay in my studio for too long, they get absorbed into something else or maybe harvested. It depends. If they're absolutely magnifique, then they just stay that way and that's it. But if there was, while building, you know, if I felt like maybe I could have or something, that's it. It's over. Like if they stay here too long, they get deconstructed and rebuilt into something more fantastic, you know? So.
And that even more so is just hitting home like the circle of creativity, right? You're maybe starting with an idea, you let it have its moment in the sun, and then like, especially since the pieces are reusable, right? They're built to be built and then to be taken apart. You're just continuing that story of what the pieces were designed for anyways. So that's perfect.
And that's my joy too, because Lego was built that way. I'm fortunate in that, you know, I'm not a metal artist where it's like you could repurpose your metal sculpture, but you got to melt that thing down.
Yep.
And do whatever with the molten metal and then go from there. Or you break it apart and have to re-weld, and there's another like very complicated process of like reattachment and stuff. Whereas with mine, I just, you know, just the pieces come down, they go into their drawers, and then they're pulled back out, or sometimes certain sections of them exist and stay that way. And I'm like, oh, this works. This part of the sculpture works. But the head, there was always something wrong with that part, so I need to fix that and change it. Like one of my favorite sculptures, probably the archetypical sculpture that speaks to most directly to my heart and to my bodies of work, is Flower Girl. And that sculpture currently is in the UK. It was spent some time in Scotland as part of an exhibit called Brick by Brick that features several artists and designers that use Lego in some form. So I have 5 pieces that are part of this show, and Flower Girl is one of them. And it's the first human sculpture that I made back in like 2013. I'd gotten a grant to exhibit during Black History Month, so it was my first recognition as an artist. And that was really cool because I'd never received a grant I had for anything. And here I was getting this like sum of money to create sculptures of like Black people. And that wasn't the mandate. I just was going to create what I was going to create. And it turns out I'm a Flower Girl. And she actually, in many ways, has the semblance of my younger daughter, Jaciria. And there's like, I don't know, there's something that is very like innocent about the sculpture. And the evolution of the artwork is important too, because when I built it, I wasn't as proficient with Lego as I am now. Of course, you know, you grow, but even then I still didn't have a grasp of what was possible in terms of parts. So I managed to build this sculpture and age the sculpture. So when I first built it, it was about the size of a 6-year-old, and now she's about the size and age like of a 9-10-year-old. And who knows what's going to happen if this sculpture comes back. My wife seems to think it's not going to come back from the UK. It'll sell somewhere out there and never return. But I have a feeling the sculpture will come back to me. And if it does, who knows? I might be inclined to like age the sculpture some more and like, you know, build it even further and turn her into like a teenager or something. So yeah, it's, you know, there's the possibility is just truly endless.
I love it. It's just a constant evolution. And I think that's really fun to watch too. And hopefully as the artist, but then also as the viewer too, continues to give us like, it's never stagnant, right? We're not seeing like the end and that's it, right? But it's always that kind of what next and what now too. So I love that. So, well, hopefully is the Flower Girl on your Instagram somewhere that we can see the original too?
The original, not so much.
Okay.
I mean, I might have one picture of the original, and that one I don't even think is the original because there was 3 phases. There was the first original in 2013, and then I think in 2017 there was like an upgrade and some changes, and then in like I think 2019 is when that work went to Berlin, and then from Berlin to the UK, and I changed it then. And that's when I took the sculpture and created a metal frame for her, because I was like, this isn't working anymore. Like, you know, I couldn't keep the other ones anymore because there was a lack of stability. So I was like, I'm going to build her a new body, new frame, and then from there she will like really exist in the world. You know?
I love it. I love it. Kind of like making the definitive decision, like she is here, right? Like she's fully here.
Here now.
Perfect. Okay, so let's also talk just a little bit quickly about what maybe how we can make a little bit more of that connection between the art education world or the education world, that kind of independent creative world, and your world of how you're constantly creating and you're a working artist. I know my students, like I said, love Lego, and I know a lot of people just cannot give up the opportunity to create something. But I'm curious, let's back up a little bit. What was your experience like in maybe elementary school, middle school, high school, in regards to art in general and creativity? And is there anything that you wish maybe were different, or things that you want to celebrate that really went well?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I only took one visual art class in high school in grade 9. And I enjoyed it, but again, I think because I got really into music, I wasn't really focused on visual art. But growing up, you know, I found that I was just inclined to art. There's my elementary school in Scarborough. They got the most like artistic students in a certain set of grades, and then they got us all together, and we were able to paint a mural on the wall in the school. And I remember going in there many years ago, but it was kind of still there, and that was really cool. And you know, the person I painted was this black boy with like little locks and stuff like that. And you know, it's so interesting because I always from all the things that I consumed in school and out of school, it was so Eurocentric, you know? So it showed me that despite that, I still wanted to see like myself reflected in people that look like me. So, you know, we're in class learning about Samuel de Champlain or whatever, and, you know, these Canadian like settlers. And it's like, you know, I wonder now why those things never really stuck with me, you know, that sense of like history, because even one, it was like inaccurate, and two, it just wasn't very representational of like all Canadians, you know. Mm-hmm. Even to this day, like there's like, you know, Black Canadians have been around as long as anybody like else, you know, aside from of course First Nations people. And so, you know, sometimes you go, oh, where are you from? It's like Canada. And it's like, no, but where are you from? It's like the same place as you, like with the same vibe that you have of I'm from here. Like there's some people that look like me that are like, I'm from here, in that same Black Nova Scotian here for centuries. Yeah, like that. So, you know, there's so many experiences, like the microaggressions and sometimes direct racism that I experienced growing up in like London, Ontario. I went to school there. And lived there for 3 years, my formative years from 6 to 9. And that's actually where I remember the most amount of Lego like memories, and like my imagination just like exploding and just being free as a child and just having fun and building and playing with Lego. But it was also where I got my first lessons of the real world in the racism that kind of exists in the world, and you know that it's not just something that's relegated to like malicious, you know, very apparent racism. It's the small little things and here and there that you can't really make sense of until like later, until you have the knowledge or like the language to really kind of articulate it. And by then, you know, not to say that the damage is done, but you're carrying that now. You're right. Like, oh, so that, and you know, like, and you have to like just keep that with you. So it's like, I remember when I was in a school in Mississauga doing one of these workshops, and I remember the teacher coming to me and talking to me about some of the kids that are having like some pretty serious behavioral issues, but he hadn't seen them as focused as when I was there, like addressing the class, and there was that anticipation that they were going to get to build. And one kid in particular, I remember just seeing his face when he's building a Black person out of Lego that is supposed to be his descendant, that's like some future doctor that saves the world from a virus or something. And, you know, I could see how much it really kind of spoke to him in particular. And of course the work, it just resonates with so many other kids like as well, you know. And part of like what I talk about is that, you know, even my own family tree, like my great-grandfather was like a white accountant from England that left to go to Ghana as part of what I know now is like an exploitative venture, but they went as a mining operation, and he ended up getting romantically involved with a local woman, my great-grandmother, and then they had a child, and then you know, that's kind of how the two sides of my family kind of came together. But he had a family in England. So, you
Wow.
know, I have, without a doubt, a whole like white side of the family in
Mm.
England that, you know, I don't think they know necessarily about all of this side, the Yates family in like Ghana and how that kind of unfolded. So it's interesting because if you're building something, a descendant of your own that doesn't look like you, that can help to foster some kind of, you know, understanding of like the world and like of other people's identities as well. And then
Right.
if you are building someone that looks like you, then it just only goes further to reinforce those same kind of ideals. So it's really important. You don't know what your descendants are actually going to look like. So it's important to build a world that seeks justice for all at all times, you know, because
Absolutely.
all or that other could be you, you know, like
Yeah.
it's you. It's not, you know, like you might not be othered now. You might be part of any kind of majority, whether it's like based on class or economics or race, but that other in a generation could turn around and that could be you. So
That's a really interesting point too, I think, is because uh you're both tying in a history and what you know from specifically your family, but kind of just like what has happened already, but then also bringing up this question of like what will be, and the answer is clearly we don't know, but kind of questioning like how do you prepare for that, and how do you hopefully make it so that no matter what, humanity as a whole can be respectful and loving towards any type of people. And I think that's a really huge concept to introduce to students, and not hopefully not introduce, but to talk about with students, and is incredibly important. I mean, that's, if not why we're here, to respect and understand everyone's identity, but whether it be their past or their present or their future. And I think that through your work and through what you're sharing too, Ekow, it helps us to have these conversations a bit too, because we're seeing in what you're creating as well.
And with something that's super, super accessible and like, you know, you want to do it. Like like so many times I remember being in school and yeah, we get to get out of class. Yay. But what are we going down to the assembly to watch? It's like, what is this? You know, like it might be just like, okay. And then you just talk with your friends and be like, yeah, you know. So having something that is like truly engaging and really allows young people in particular to just get excited about like learning something new and something that will like no doubt help to improve relations even amongst their own social circles, right?
Yeah.
Because so much what I felt was that I was othered in so many ways, right? Like I had friends and not like, it's not like living in London, everyone was mean. There was a few people that clearly had some problems, but you know, my friend group, everyone like Jason and Ryan, these were like good friends of mine. But at the same time, when you're still like the darkest skin one or the only one that has like brown skin, like it's an experience that those others that are with you don't really know. They can't really experience it that way. So even though this artwork or this workshop, I like to say it's not giving anybody that's not Black particular license to just start making art about solely Black people. Because yeah, it's something that, you know, I combat today as an artist, where I'll find some, you know, some gallerist will put me on to some artist and be like, this artist is fabulous, you should take a look. And I look at their work and I'm like, they are so talented, so cool. It's like Black women in these great poses, strong, or, you know, Black people in these kind of like casual situations in the street, and just that the talent is just amazing. And then I find out it's like, you know, a white artist in Edmonton, and I'm just like, you really shouldn't be doing this, you know. Like, it's one thing to paint all people as your body of work. It's another thing to also paint like people that look like you as your work. But when you kind of fetishize or exoticize, overindulge in other people's culture and then turn it, you're getting profit from it. And I mean, make no mistake, Black culture is, in my opinion, without a doubt, the most commodified kind of culture that is attached to a people that exists on earth through like just the music and style and everything else. It's just, you know, it's so commodified. So it really gets me when people kind of do that. It'd just be like me, you know, saying, you know, I just love like indigenous culture and painting these things and building like dream catchers. Like, no, that's not, stay in your lane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So aside from that, though, I mean, having one-off experiences where you're building descendants that you think like that might be you in the future, there's so much room for that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us too, and for being vulnerable about your own experiences, because I think that's ideally, hopefully, a way to kind of take down that stigma over like talking about things, right? And talking and saying like, maybe this is not appropriate for this artist to be doing because it doesn't represent who they are, or what is creating work like that, maybe starting a conversation about, and how can that be beneficial. So I think it comes down to just communicating, right? And making sure that we're ideally practicing being as respectful as possible, but also just really celebrating. And even just last week, I was chatting with Angelica, and who's an Indigenous artist, and she was just discussing the fact that there are ways to celebrate and appreciate and not appropriate. And the same thing is for any culture. Anybody, you kind of just need to do the research and do the background to make sure that it is something that, do the work, right? And exactly. So I appreciate you reminding us of that too, because I could see this having some really interesting and important conversations, especially at that upper level too, about, upper level with our students, about how are you creating something and what does that mean and how could it be interpreted as well. So I think that is a direct tie-in, as well as, I wouldn't be afraid to talk to my little ones about that too. My little kindergarten through 5th grade kiddos, that's where it starts, is taking the time to talk to them and say, okay, what do you see when you see this piece of work, right? When I show them your work, Ekow, I'm going to let them interpret it how they might, and then we'll talk about that, because that's how we discover and how we learn and maybe unlearn things as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, well, I could talk to you all day, but I want to start wrapping up here too, because I would love to hear 2 things from you. First, I know we had some intense conversations today, and we're also celebrating your Building Beyond that's coming out, and all of the really fun things that are going to be on the horizon for you, and hopefully that we can be a part of as well too. But I also, yes, but I was also hoping you could just share with us just some words of encouragement or some positivity as we move forward as a human race, right? Not a lot to ask, right? But it could be artistic. It could be, as a person. What would you like to share with us about moving forward?
Well, first thing, get vaccinated. Okay, please. I haven't been out there putting that out, like, get it, do it. Because I there's a part of me that still wants to respect people, like, just doing what they feel is right and safe for their family. I get that.
Of course.
But just stop with the misinformation and focus on the world. They're having like COVID parties in Edmonton where they're trying to get it to get past it. Like, silly things. So yeah, speak to the current situation of the world. Please do that.
Okay. Important, yes.
And that said, yeah, be kind. And I think, and do the work, because we all have work to do. It's not like, hey, I'm the black guy, so I get to like just point things out and say, hey, you got to go do your work about racism. Like, I have to do my work with feminism. I have to do my work, with any remnants of any like homophobia that, or just like heteronormative thinking that is still a part of me. It's there.
Yeah.
Like, in this, when you grow up in this society, I feel like we kind of just get immediately, whether it's like indoctrinated or just breathing in the entitlement, privilege, racism, all these things, the classism that exists in the world around us as we grow up. So it's all of our responsibilities to purge that stuff from our, like, I could say something even after this conversation to my wife, and the next thing, it sounds a bit ableist. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I need to check that, and like, really like kind of do my work in terms of like how do I feel about that? Because I find a lot of times people don't like, we feel easily attacked.
Yes.
And that has a lot to do with our own egos, and then sense of like security in the world, or a sense of familiarity with what we know. But most times if someone's pointing something out that they feel is unkind, it's probably true. Listen to them. You know, it's
Yeah.
that someone's like, oh, I find that offensive, and there's room for argument. Like, well, you know, I don't say that. Just be like, let me go do my own work, apologize first, and then, you know, I got some work to do. And I think that's like the kind of best way for everybody to move forward, is to really just check yourself and check your friends. You know, like it's colleagues, like you're in the coffee room, someone says something, bring it up, say, you know, that was kind of like, don't, you know, that's not cool. And if you feel squeamish, or I mean, and we all sometimes do, and sometimes it's time and place about like addressing things, there are resources out there to help you talk about these things. It's not, oh, I'm tongue-tied, I don't know how to bring it up, and then that's it. That's a cop, you know? No, there's always resources and ways to find out how to like engage. You know, my wife, she is like a social justice educator amongst so many other things, and she runs workshops like, you know, how to talk to your kids about race, you know, Shut It Uncle Bob, talking and dismantling like racist like family members and stuff like that, so that the holiday season can be a time of growth for everybody, and not just like, you know, times where we feel stifled around people that are not growing at the same time as you are. So that was very long.
No, it's also very necessary and very important to talk about these things too. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I think even hearing you talk about that too, first of all, like, of course, not being afraid, because you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, you just don't. And sometimes like people haven't heard something pointed out to them before, whatever it might be, or even just had a conversation about it to say, well, I guess my interpretation was this, and so why might you lean on saying this in this way, or whatever it might be. And bringing it up is how you can kind of have people think about it, right? And have them kind of just take a moment to think about why they're making the choices they are too. And I think don't get me wrong, when there's something that's clearly offensive, I think it's fine to tell the person like, absolutely stop. But I think too, sure. Like, absolutely. But I think sometimes phrasing it as feedback can feel less scary, because I know what you're saying about the ego is like, when people feel attacked, it's like the shutdown happens, and it's criticism, right? But when it's here's something I noticed, this is just feedback to you, right? It's like, you know, it can be a little bit easier to take a little bit too. But of course, like I say that with a grain of salt, knowing that it's situational depending on what we're talking about. Of course. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that, because I think being kind, my students started talking about religion today, and they were talking about like, who was the first person? This is second graders. Who was the first human on Earth? And I was like, wow, like this is going to be a conversation, right? So then we started talking about how there are so many religions in the world, just like there's so many types of people, and what people look like and what they believe, and how it is, in my opinion, most important to just simply be kind and understanding, and that it can be a religion. The fact that being a human, being the best version of you, can be just as important as anything else. So I think that's what hopefully we can share with our students as well. So speaking of students, do you have just a short message for our kids? I might show this to my students when I introduce you, and tell them about how they can be inspired by your work. So I'd love to hear a message for our students.
So for all the kids out there, you know, it's important, keep building. Okay, and that doesn't mean necessarily keep building with Lego. Of course, do that because it's amazing, but also keep building a future in your mind and in your world that you would want to live in, that you would want your kids to live in, that you would want your family to live in, a world that is filled with justice and equity for all. So keep building.
Thank you, Ekow. I appreciate that, and I know that will resonate with a lot of students as well. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up today. I know I have a handful of friends still in the chat here, so I'm gonna ask you one question so you can get your hands on this super cool holographic sticker for staying with us for the live portion of our chat today. So those of you that are here with us still, If you know the answer to this question, type into the chat. And if you're the first one, then I'll ask you to just message the Art of Ed, your mailing address, and I will send you a super cool sticker. So the question for our trivia is, what color of Lego does Ekow primarily use?
Try to block it over here.
You guys. Type it in the chat. What color of Legos does Ekow primarily use for his work? I feel like, how could we not get answers? But sometimes there's like a small leg. So just wait for a hot second and we'll get them. Y'all, respond in the chat if you want a cool sticker. Thank you. Okay, Grace. Oh yeah, we coming in here. Grace 7190. You are my winner today. Thank you all for participating and for hanging out with us today for our chat. Ekow, thank you a million times a million for sharing your knowledge, your artwork, and yourself with the world. I will be sharing a bunch of things in the Instagram story for the Art of Ed. So if you want to watch any videos or just learn a little bit more about Ekow's work, you can do that. And then, of course, once the Building Beyond packs and everything like that get released, make sure you follow along because that's exciting.
Whoa. Yeah. And I'll just add to that, the best way to just stay updated, just follow me on Instagram because we have a promo video that we're going to be releasing out there into the world. But Instagram is always like kind of ground zero. So if you follow me there, and as we're speaking, I saw my web developers like, we have a problem. So the scheduled date for release is November 1st. But any changes to that, just follow on Instagram and I'm definitely going to like tell the whole world from there, and then it'll do what it does. So
beautiful. We can't wait to see it. And of course, like, this is what it's all about. It's just like letting it be what it's going to be. And if it's a little later, we'll just be even more excited about it.
Awesome. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Ekow. Have a great night. And again, thank you. Y'all, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.